Why do we see the world through European eyes? Because we were taught so. Why do we run and try to hide from ourselves? But when we wake up the next day, you're still you. Why don't we want to reclaim Africa? Why is it that more Europeans run into Africa while we run into them? The same people who put us in this situation, but are ultimately not 100% guilty, because sometimes all we want is to be next to the master or the oppressor. Now, most people don't like to hear that, but this is true of Africans and especially of us here in America. They're trying to kill the leadership of African nations because that way they can keep exploiting the country, the continent, and therefore enrich themselves as they have been doing for centuries. And we act like we don't care. But we certainly need to really take in and understand what has been done to us and how limited our thinking is, even though our abilities are immeasurable. You see, in a world shaped by centuries of colonialization, slavery, and systemic oppression, a haunting question persists. Why do so many black people, especially those in the diaspora, feel disconnected from Africa, from their ancestral homeland? And most people will get mad right there and say, I'm not from Africa. My people were Indians. So where did your great, 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 great grandmother or grandfather come from? And even if they came before the transatlantic slave trade, or even if they did not leave Africa, why is it so easy for you to turn on your brother? For you to take money from a man you know is going to sit down and extract the minerals that are meant for the people that reside there, but all you want is enough money to go live amongst the people that's oppressing your people. You want to run and hide. But I call for a return to self. Why do we resist association with a continent that birthed humanity itself? The answer is layered, painful, and deeply political. It is rooted in a global system that has worked tirelessly to sever African people from their origins, distort their image, and suppress their brilliance. See, this was an engineered disconnection. The transatlantic slave was not merely a physical displacement. It was a calculated erasure. Millions of Africans were violently uprooted, stripped of their languages, spiritual practices, and familial bonds. This was not incidental. It was a strategy of domination. By severing cultural ties, enslavers sought to break the spirit of a people and render them more controllable. And they have made them more controllable. Colonial powers reinforced this rupture by constructing narratives that painted Africa as primitive, savage, and devoid of civilization. These myths, which they are, were embedded in educational systems religious institutions, and media, not only in the West, but within Africa itself. The goal was clear: justify exploitation, maintain supremacy, ensure the servitude of others to them. Western media continues to perpetrate this distortion or these distortions, focusing on poverty, conflict, disease, while ignoring Africa's rich cultural, scientific, and philosophical contributions. This skewed lens has left many black people, especially in the Americas and Europe, with a fragmented or negative view of their heritage because they view the world through European eyes. They even want to look like them. Yet, beneath these layers of distortion lies a truth that cannot be erased. Africa is the cradle of humanity. The earliest humans walked its soil. From its heart sprang the foundations of civilization. The ancient societies of Kemet, Nubia, Mali, Ethiopia, and others were centers of learning, innovation, and spiritual wisdom. African civilizations developed a complex system of governance, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, architecture, long before many parts of the world even woke up. The great library of Alexandria, the astronomical knowledge of the Dogon people, and the advanced metallurgy of ancient Zimbabwe are just a few examples of Africa's intellectual prowess. Spiritually, African traditions have long emphasized harmony with nature, reverence for ancestors, and a deep connection to the cosmos. Concepts like Ma'at, balance and justice, Ubuntu, I am because we are, reflect a worldwide view that values interconnectedness, community, and moral responsibility, not selfishness and I want. These philosophies are not relics, they are living systems of thought that continue to inspire and guide. Who are the geniuses? We ask, which group of people has produced the most geniuses? We must first challenge the very framework of that question. Genius is not defined to Western definitions of intelligence or achievement. It is found in the oral traditions of griots, the architectural marvels of Timbuktu, the mathematical systems of ancient Ethiopia, the resilience of enslaved Africans who preserved culture under unimaginable conditions. Modern metrics often overlook the contributions of African people due to systemic bias in education, access, and recognition. Yet, when given the opportunity, African descended individuals has consistently excelled in science, art, literature, and leadership. From Imhotep, the polymath of ancient Egypt, to contemporary figures, African genius is undeniable. So how do we get back to reconnecting? The path to reconnection, the reluctance to embrace African identity, is not a failure of pride. It is a system of historical trauma, but healing is possible. Across the globe, a renaissance is underway. Movements like Pan-Africanism, Afrofuturism, and Black Lives Matter are reigniting pride in African heritage. DNA testing is helping people trace their roots. African fashion, music, and spirituality are being celebrated anew. To reclaim Africa is to reclaim the truth. It is to remember that before oppression. Return to self. African people are not survivors of history, they are the originators. Their intellectual and spiritual contributions have shaped the world in ways that are often unacknowledged but deeply felt. The journey back to Africa is not geographical, it is a return to self, to truth, and to power. Africa is not something to run from, it is something to run toward. It is not a burden, but a birthright, and embracing it, Black people reclaim not only their history, but their future.